video games are a very interesting, powerful, and fairly new area of media to consider. One of the really interesting things from a developmental sense is that they are arguably the best teaching tool we have, or the best technologically based teaching tool we have, in the sense that you are not only being exposed to situations and people and concepts the way you are with television or movies, but you're an active player in them. You actively drive the narrative, and you make decisions and choices and moves that will then change the direction of what's going on. What that means, of course, is this is essentially a virtual reality, that you are immersed in an environment with a set of conditions, that you are asked by the gameplay to behave in certain ways. If you do it really well, you get rewarded. You also get more complicated and interesting narratives. If you do it badly, you get punished. So you are inside what psychologists call behavioral scripts. And behavioral scripts are how we learn anything. It's how we learn to say please and thank you. It's how we learn to please our parents and to do well in school. But if you're in an environment where, for example, you are learning how to play soccer well, it will help you learn soccer strategy. It won't help you kick a ball. It will help you think about how to play the game. If you're in a game where you're approaching the world over the barrel of a weapon and your job is to kill them before they kill you, you will get better at that. So it really is content driven with video games. The medium itself is neutral. We give the valence of good or bad or destructive to it. Unfortunately, the most popular video games, even among very young kids, are the ones that reward you for doing violence against others. And when you think of the fact that people sat in front of a flight simulator and learned to fly planes well enough to bring the World Trade Towers to the ground, and we're putting our kids for fun in front of essentially killing simulators, where are we going with that? We have to really recognize the fact that there are changes in their minds, in their thinking, and their behavior that are going to come of that. If there weren't changes from media, from entertainment, we wouldn't do it. So we need to go into these processes with our eyes open, understanding that we are changing our children, we are changing ourselves, and we should make sure that the changes that are happening are ones that we want.
You know, and that game makes me sick to my stomach. It makes me sick to my stomach. But I have to tell you that what is lacking is that we have forgotten that we belong to each other. We have forgotten that we need to be accountable and responsible for each other, and that we need to be aware of what's going on around us. And that starts with parenting in the home, from our kids being a very, very young age and understanding what is going on at home, and making sure that our kids are empathetic and sympathetic toward others. And that does include these types of video games, that we don't hurt others because we know how that feels, and we don't reach out and do that type of thing to other people. And if that includes video games, then that means that kids don't play that type of video game.
And Dawn, thank you for answering that. I know that is a difficult question, but I think it's just so important because I too agree that these video games send the wrong message, and we live in a completely different day and age as to when our Constitution was written. And I agree with you 100%. And Dawn,
thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that difficult story. And I hope a lot of people are learning, maybe getting those video games out of their kids' homes. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
And some critics argue, though, the other side, that video games may be the source of school violence and should be banned. Games like Super Columbine Massacre. In fact, take a look. The shooter in a recent senseless attack at a school in Montreal said that this was his favorite video game, this game that was created after a deadly massacre. It's disturbing, obviously, but the question is, are disturbed potential killers drawn to this kind of dangerous play? Should we do away with these video games? Well, the American Psychological Association doesn't necessarily agree. That it says and recommends that reducing the level of violence marketing toward children would be a good idea. But joining me now in Boston is First Amendment attorney Mark Randazza, who argues the other side, that video games are protected by the Constitution. And we, of course, agree that the Constitution, obviously, we live by it every day. But, Mark, don't you think that when you hear stories like Anna there, Dawn Anna, talking about these video games and reflecting back to what happened to her daughter, that laws need to be changed?
Hey, Dawn Anna made a great point. Okay, this starts with parenting. It starts with responsibility in the home. The fact is, these video games are expressive conduct. They are protected by the First Amendment. Court after court has held that. And we can't allow strong emotions that say, protect the children, to make us decide that we're going to throw our constitutional values away. We can get where we want to be. Okay, if you have bad speech you don't agree with, like these games, and I am fine with anybody who has a bad opinion of them. The cure is more speech, more involvement, education, and when you have a message that is counter to another message, you bring out your counter message. You don't try to suppress the message you don't like.
But bad speech never killed anyone, and I'm sorry, but Super Columbine Massacre happens to be the favorite video game of a man, a shooter, in that recent senseless attack in Canada. He said it was his favorite game. He learned something from that game, and then he copied it.
Until Monday, the worst school shooting in world history was in Erfurt, Germany, at the hands of Robert Steinhauser. He killed 16 and then himself, and he was immersed in the game Counter-Strike. It's a very violent, internet-based game in which you kill as many people as possible with all sorts of weapons. That event changed the chancellor's race in Germany. It changed the laws in Germany, and here we have now Mr. Joe, who was involved in this same game, according to his high school classmates. His own suite mates in Blacksburg said that he was on the computer all the time. He wasn't downloading music. He was playing this game. Chris,
that's not what we just heard. Wait, we just talked to one of his suite mates who said when he looked on the screen, he said he just saw him writing linear English, just writing apparently essays or plays or something.
When he looked on the screen. But the fact is, and here's what's significant, Joe was able to go room to room very calmly, efficiently, coolly, killing people. In Red Lake, Minnesota, Jeffrey Weiss killed 10 people, and they found that he trained on a video game to do it. Chris, you can't do something this well the first time you do it. And the fact is, it wasn't the first time. He was in a hyper-reality situation, in virtual reality. Almost every school shooter the FBI and Secret Service has found is immersed in violent entertainment.
Okay, explain to the civilian out here, the person who doesn't know about Counter-Strike. How's the game prepare or drill him in the execution of 32 people?
It drills you and gives you scenarios on how to kill them. It gets you to kill with your heart rate lower. In fact, the FBI agent in Red Lake said that we could tell by the surveillance videos that Weiss's heart rate was not above 60. That's impossible to do unless you've done it before. And so the video games, it's the reason, Chris, why the military uses these same type games to train soldiers how to kill and also to have the willingness to kill.
How we assess effects is using a Pearson correlation, which essentially ranges, in this case, it would range from basically 0 to 1. A 1 would mean, wow, that's gigantic, that's the only thing causing it. A 0 would mean no effect at all. And what we find with video games is the effect size is about 0.17. So it's very small. It is positive. It's going in the positive direction, so there is an effect. But it's not as if it's a child's picking up a game and instantly they're becoming, psychotic. It's a very small effect. It's a consistent effect, but small. And more recent research actually suggests, from our lab and other labs, is that this effect is really only consistent in certain types of individuals, specifically individuals with predispositions before they ever played the video game. So certain psychological profile of, say, an adult or a child might make the video games have a greater effect on them.